The post-COVID world has shed a new light on the difference that private aviation can make, the difference that you can experience as a traveler in an aircraft like this compared within the airlines. And that's driving up demand for private charter flights, which is a great thing. But at the same time, the industry is facing some quite significant headwinds in the shape of things like rising fuel costs from inflation and an insecurity that comes from the war in Ukraine. All of this potentially could derail that recovery. Well, to make sense of this situation, we're going to be talking to experts from different parts of the industry to find out what they're seeing in the front lines and what it means for the future of this industry.
Right since the beginning of the pandemic, business aviation has been out of sync with the big picture, hasn't it? BizAv was extremely resilient throughout the pandemic. From mid-2021, started surging back in terms of utilization ahead of 2019 trends. And by the end of 2021 was up by 7% against 2019, right? But right now, as of mid-May, we're up 22% in BizJet sectors compared to May 2019. So, you know, what that tells you is that there are still underlying waves of recovery going on in BizAv, which in terms of tailwinds are overpowering the headwinds which are accumulating, undoubtedly.
But there's no doubt that aircraft operators and manufacturers alike are seeing strong demand. And what's even more significant is that completely new customers are a big part of this trend. These are the so-called concept buyers who haven't previously seen private aviation as something for them. Well, COVID seems to have changed that.
I think the priority has shifted. I think if you are wealthy, you've got the needs, you have a multiple companies expanding overseas. You know, today you do not have the offer from commercial aviation that you had prior to the pandemic, number one. Number two, you're obviously concerned about your health, about the safety of your passengers, your family, your close colleagues. And suddenly this all came together and it became a very reasonable choice. And perhaps in the past, people didn't really see business aviation always as a reasonable choice. And I think this pandemic has shifted the priority. People now can justify it.
Aircraft builders are reporting long backlogs of orders. For instance, for Embraer, these stretch back to 2024, and for its rival Gulfstream to 2025.
So what's interesting about it is it starts with new demand drivers, new priorities, new focus on health, safety, privacy, security, and those are the drivers that brought people from the base of the marketplace coming in to access aviation, whether that be for fractional shares with Flexjet or whether it be to buy an aircraft on a Phenom operator platform. And what's most important about that is the stickiness of these customers. Because when you bring the pie getting bigger from the bottom, can you keep them interested in your brand, interested in the industry? Do they understand all the costs associated with managing or purchasing and operating an aircraft?
Our customers are telling us that private flying has really bounced back strongly in the post-COVID era, if you will. So customers are flying more, they're flying their airplanes more. Some of them are flying more of their own employees on their airplanes than they did before COVID. So we're seeing higher utilization. We know anecdotally that charter markets are very busy. It's very hard to find charter aircraft these days. The pre-owned markets are very tight with low inventory, which means there is a lot of activity in the marketplace, and Gulfstream benefits from that by being able to sell more new airplanes. So we've been very busy on the new airplane side.
New customers have brought new priorities to a mode of transportation that has been seen by some in the past as elitist and hard to justify.
I also believe that this old perception of private aviation was anyway, it was time for in general, people to move on from that really pastiche imagery. I think business aviation is a very modern industry, which allows individuals to save time, to go more direct, to simplify their life. You know, our clients and our customers are extremely successful, and through services like the one we offer at Flexjet, their life becomes a lot simpler to manage between their expansion, their family, their art collection. This is one of the decisions they make in life that actually is going to improve their life quality.
Strong demand has also been seen for pre-owned aircraft, with prices rocketing to an extent that has some people thinking this could represent a bubble
that will just have to burst?
I think the market is a bit frantic today, and it started very quickly to be frantic as from last summer, really at the moment of July, August. So suddenly, with the reopening of the borders, very quickly the second-hand market became dried up. So is it a good time to buy? I wouldn't say yes. Maybe there are opportunities, but I think there are very little. So hopefully everyone become more reasonable. And I think it's important to reach a time of reason now, and now to wish to have the extra mile and to, no, it doesn't make no sense, and it will participate to the inflation of this bubble.
It's all about controlling your growth and making sure that you actually maintain a very, very good ratio between reaching out to scale and also maintaining this very high-end personalization of service. These are customers who have extraordinary lives, and they're used to the most distinguished service. So you have to make sure that you keep that personal touch. It's not good enough to become a very big, large company. It's not about how big you are. It's how good, how personal. It's about the warmth in the service.
But what could be more serious are shortages of key skills in the industry and rising operating costs over which companies have little or no control.
Well, it's the cost, and it's simply the supply. The availability of resources is in so many ways making business aviation operations more complicated. And of course that feeds through to higher costs. And I think, at the moment, what we've seen, at least in the last 12 months, I think is a kind of land grab, certainly from the big charter players. They're looking for new users, and then they're looking to keep those new users. I don't think that they are finally focused on profitability right now. But as those costs start to accumulate this year, and certainly through the fuel costs, really going up by well over 50%, then we will see that start to feed through to customers, and some of those customers, frankly, not being happy with the ticket price.
The entire ecosystem of aerospace, not unique to executive aviation, across all sectors has clearly been impacted by those forces, whether it be the slowing down of economies, whether it be the rising cost of interest rates and inflation, whether it be supply chain challenges and logistical challenges of transporting parts and products that are needed to build an aircraft or recover and return an aircraft to service after a maintenance event. All those are real issues that are involved right now today. It's a very complex segment of the marketplace. Now, long term, no one has that crystal ball to see how far out some of these pressures might be, but we're being very smart. We've only said our guidance for 2022. We are not forecasting, like some of our peers, guidance for, I think I can deliver all these airplanes in the years ahead because of those headwinds. We're being very smart in regards to our strategic growth. It gives us an opportunity to have the supply chain recover, furloughed people to bring back to the workforce, which has been a big issue as well across all segments, and then stable growth and stability in pricing discipline. These things all work together for a very strong aviation future.
Until fairly recently, Russia was a significant growth market for private aviation. But now the country is an international pariah, and many of its wealthiest citizens are being hit by sanctions in retaliation for their connection with President Vladimir Putin.
That customer base, in our opinion, is switched off for a very long time. In fact, the Russian aerospace industry has effectively been sort of unplugged from the global ecosystem in terms of the industry. So, yes, that is going to have an impact, but at the top end, you've got to remember that is much less than 2% of BizJet activity and business aviation deliveries. It'd be the secondary effects that people worry about. What does that do in terms of inflation? What does that do in terms of broader economic uncertainty?
In some respects, the high levels of wealth in private aviation may give the impression it's immune from what's happening in the outside world. But that's just not the case.
Eventually, BizAv is not going to flourish outside the context of the macroeconomy, and the macroeconomy has got dark clouds ahead. Inflation is here to stay. It doesn't look like it's transitory, so interest rates will go up. The stock market will hit a big correction, and a lot of that wealth effect will dissipate. And undoubtedly, that wealth effect has brought in a lot of new flyers to BizAv. Also, we're going to see the airlines recover. So, the accumulated effect will slow down, if not stop, the BizAv surge that we've seen over the last kind of 12 months.